Hi, and welcome to City Desk, a behind-the-scenes look at Santa Barbara's top local news headlines. I'm your host, Jerry Roberts. Tonight, from high atop the palatial headquarters of TV Santa Barbara, we'll look at these headlines. An exclusive interview with feminist icon Gloria Steinem, who's bringing her anti-Trump crusade here. Hundreds of Planned Parenthood supporters rally against a move to defund women's health services. The new school board digs in against a host of tough challenges, including a surprise budget gap. And renters get sticker shock from the city's latest unaffordable housing development. Joining me tonight, Starshine Rochelle, voted Santa Barbara's most popular columnist 68 years in a row. Laura Capps, school board member and indefatigable progressive warrior. And Josh Molina, media pundit and staff writer for the Pacific Coast Business Times. Thank you all for being here. You like the way I pronounce indefatigable?
Very good.
So you and Gloria Steinem, you got the only interview that she's going to give in town. She's coming here next week.
Yeah.
So what's the headline?
That's a good question. I haven't seen it.
What was
I offered several headlines.
It's in next week's Independent.
We'll have to be surprised. Yes, it's a cover story on
What
March
would it
2nd.
be if you were writing it?
Oh, I had some doozies. The thing with headlines now is that they have to be pretty straightforward, I guess, for the web. I was told that all my flowery, fun pizzazz had to be dialed back a bit. So.
But you have to have
Oh,
a
no,
lot of
that's too bad.
clickbait. You have to have clickbait.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, what did she say?
Jerry, she said it's all about the vagina. Just what you'd think she would say. Mostly, we had a...
Well, there's the headline.
We had actually what the headline I suggested was my favorite thing that she said during the interview, which was at the very end. I was trying to get her to admit that she was depressed about the election, like the rest of us, and she wouldn't go there. She was just like, "No, you know what? We're gonna fight it, and we got this, and we're gonna." And I was like, "Come on, you must get tired of saying that all the time." And finally, she goes, "You know what? It's like all the women in the march who are holding those signs. I can't believe we're still fighting this shit."
No.
And so I wanted that to be the headline, but I don't know if that's going to work.
Wow. What was the most substantive thing that she told? Was she surprised that Trump won?
She was surprised. But she said she wasn't probably as surprised as the rest of us because she does a lot of traveling. Her new book, as you know, I think you read it, what's it called? Life on the Road, is all about her life traveling. And she spends a lot of time meeting with individuals, and she's not in a bubble, as some of us apparently are. And she said that she meets these people that are really excited about Trump, and so she wasn't quite as surprised as the rest of us.
And what is she going to do?
About what?
About Trump.
Well, she's really excited about this new women's movement. She said the difference is the first time, the first time when she sort of helped start and go the whole women's movement, there weren't as many supporters at all, and it was really a bigger fight. And now she said it's a majority movement, and it really is. It's got so much momentum, and there's men behind it. And one of my favorite things that she said was, I said, "How important is it that there were so many men out there marching during the Women's March?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, it's crucial. It's hugely important." She goes, "That's why we called it feminism." And I was thinking, like, that's right. You named it feminism. Like, I can't believe I'm
Like
talking
she came up
about
with the word.
Right.
Or she was probably in the...
Well, the movement.
She catapulted
She
the
was
word.
involved in coming up with what to call this because she said they wanted to call it womanism, but they didn't think that men would feel comfortable saying, "I'm a womanist." And so,
Jerry would.
or a woman's liver. And so they decided feminism would be something men would be more comfortable saying.
Josh, do you consider yourself a feminist or a womanist?
I'm certainly not a womanist.
humanist.
Yes. No, I think I'm a feminist, and feminist, as we know, does not mean what people thought it used to mean.
What does it mean?
It just means an equal opportunity and equal support for all genders.
Very good.
And I don't know. Have you seen Emma Watson's "He for She" speech where she talks about the new definition of feminism? You should watch it. She gave it to the United Nations, but she talks about taking the word back because a lot of men say, "Oh, I can't be a feminist" because of the word feminine is in there. But feminism needs
That
to
was a
include the fact that men can feel some of the traits typically associated with females. So it's okay for a man to walk in the room and not feel like I've got to solve the problem, right? It's okay for men to be vulnerable. It's okay for men to slide a little bit to the other side on the gender spectrum, and has nothing to do with anything other than perceptions of how men should act. And so she said, in order to bring feminism full circle, we need to include men as part of the conversation, that it cannot just be the women who are protesting. And it really resonated with the millennials, and all the people who grew up watching Harry Potter or reading the books.
She's a huge fan of Gloria Steinem, and I just read something recently where she said that book was one of her top 5 favorite books of all time, Life on the Road.
2 questions. First, are you as astonished as I am that Josh has many thoughts and insights about feminism? And 2,
And he watches UN speeches.
he knows that I would get that.
Hey,
Harry Potter
It was all out of TED Talks. So how, as a practical matter, because you are in fact at times a practical operative and have been.
Operative sounds
That's
dark.
pretty good though.
is your business card? Educator / operative.
How real and significant is the majority women's movement of which Starshine refers?
It's overwhelming. And I mean, there's so much on Facebook right now of the resistance of different things, and Progressive Coalition and Indivisible and all these things. I mean, it's powerful. It's kind of distracting, but it's in a good way. There's so many things you could do on every single night, and so much activity happening. And really, the confluence of Facebook with the movement, that's what Gloria Steinem didn't have back then. I mean, just this ability to communicate like this. I mean, just the way that we talked about this last time, but the way that this women's march propped up here just within a matter of days, not by any group, but by 2 individuals.
Right.
It's just stunning. And back to the men included, the polling around women's health is very equitable. Like, men really care about women's health as well as women do. It's a very strong, there's a reason why Democrats run.
Not all men.
Yeah, not all men.
Mike Pence, for example.
Right.
Not
Right.
P1,
Right.
Vice President of the United States.
Right.
Or Trump.
Right. But here in this area, I can tell you that women's health is a very popular issue that men and women both really care about, and they want to protect.
Can a woman be a feminist and not be pro-choice?
I think definition-wise, probably, you could argue that. I would have a hard time being friends with her. We would have to have a serious conversation.
Yes,
But I think
let me, because everyone wants to know my opinion on feminism.
I think,
but pro-choice or not is like a very personal decision. It's some, for people it's a religious decision,
Exactly.
and you can have all the qualities of being a good feminist who equates both genders, who treats each genders respectfully and equally, and doesn't expect one to do this and another to do that, and still have your own personal feelings about pro-choice. Of course, you can be friends with that person.
But the question becomes when it gets into the political realm.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this Planned Parenthood protest this week. About 350 people. And we should say you're on the board of Planned Parenthood.
I am, yep. But and it just as someone who cares about the issue, I mean, it was stunning to be there. There were a lot of people, a lot of good energy.
You were there too.
And I think I do think we do live in a bubble here, and I think one thing that it accomplished was for people to understand, and potential reporters to understand that, wow, if this comes down the pike as expected, the defunding of Planned Parenthood could happen as soon as March. They can roll it in Congress, part of the effort to dismantle Obamacare, and then they would only need a majority and not a supermajority, the tactic that they're using. Yep, exactly. So if this happens, it's actually going to really impact the Central Coast. Planned Parenthood has 5 health centers here in the Tri-County area, and they serve about 35,000 men and women a year, the vast majority of which are relying on Medicaid, which then they wouldn't be able to use. So this will be some
Medicaid is the Medicare
reimbursement, for low income
That's
folks.
And that's what defunding Planned Parenthood
Yes.
really means. It's sort of shorthand for saying that people who use federal funding for healthcare won't be able to use that at Planned Parenthood
Right.
for their medical care.
I mean, it'll create a real disaster, a healthcare disaster nationally, but also here for the people that really rely on Planned Parenthood. And you know, we know the statistic now, it's less than 5%, some say 3% are actually go to abortion services. It's mostly cancer screening and preventative care and HIV testing and things like that, that people, 1 in 5 women have relied on Planned Parenthood nationally at some point in their life. And those numbers are probably fairly consistent here. So it'll be hugely disruptive here in the Tri-Counties.
But this federal judge in Texas this week blocked the state from cutting off the Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood. Why? Why did they do that, and why wouldn't that transfer elsewhere?
Yeah, and I don't know, you know, there are certainly some tools that California can use to stop the repercussions of if Congress does go through with their plans to defund. There are some techniques and tools and legal avenues by which we could sort of insulate California from those cuts. I don't know. There's some options that are being weighed right now by Planned Parenthood. And as Jenna Tosh said at the rally, I mean, we've been preparing for this and fighting for this for 100 years. So don't think we're not. You know, the Planned Parenthood isn't ready, and that was evidenced by how many people showed up and really are concerned about this.
Starshine, I'm reading the Newshawk piece, and it states here, messages on signs were scattered across the Santa Barbara County Courthouse. Keep your religion out of my vajayjay, read one handmade sign. That was yours, wasn't it? It was yours.
But there were some great signs there.
Did you know that she once wrote a column that had 85 synonyms for the word
Oh, really?
vajayjay? You did, didn't you? Yes.
It's your favorite
That's a
one.
fact, isn't it?
We'll always talk about that.
That was your sign. I know that was your sign.
No, but there was a funny thing going on with signs at that rally,
Yeah.
wasn't there? Did you see? So there was a couple people there who were against Planned Parenthood, and they were protesting Planned Parenthood, and they had a couple of scary anti-abortion signs with giant pictures of bloody fetuses on them, gross. And they were standing up on either side of the stage, really big signs, like the size of this table. And every time they would move, some Planned Parenthood supporters would come with their smaller signs and jump in front of them and cover up their signs. And then the protesters would move, and then our people would move in front of it. It was so funny. And it was like only in Santa Barbara was the most peaceful, non-violent, but it was almost like people started laughing in the middle of Salud's speech because the sign thing was going on.
It certainly wasn't because Salud told a joke.
No.
But there was a comment from one of the anti-protesters, which I want to ask you about, where she says, most people don't realize that when you're pregnant and conceiving a child, there's another body that has nothing to do with your body. It's another being that needs defense. What do you think of that statement?
Wow, we're going to go there.
It has nothing to do with your body. Do you agree with that?
That person can make that choice. I think that's the point that we're that Planned Parenthood. That's not for that. Pro-choice means you can make your own choices, right? So you can hold that opinion. It doesn't mean that you need to enforce it on other people's health.
But do you think that's a factual statement? There's another body that has nothing to do with your body?
No, of course it has everything to do with your body, the person who brings the body into the world. And also there's a huge misconception about abortions. And let's go ahead and go there. What I think a lot of people don't know is that abortions aren't carried out in this country when they say late-term abortions, they're talking about what, 20 weeks late, and that's very late. That's one of the latest that anyone will do in this country.
Usually 12 weeks.
Yeah, much earlier. And so I think when people there's this mythology about late-term abortions,
right,
and people have this sense that they're like pulling out a practically viable child, and that's not what we're talking about here. And I just think that if more people knew that, it wouldn't be such an issue.
Josh, what percentage of the 35,000 patients who are seen locally by Planned Parenthood are men?
I don't know what percentage that is.
12%.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's an actual fact, at least according to Newshawk. Huh. It is.
They do vasectomies.
Maybe that's it.
Very affordable.
That must be it. Okay, last thing on Planned Parenthood. If you look closely at this photograph, in the Santa Barbara Independent, the small figure in pink to the right in the rear is looking at her iPhone. And I believe that's you, is it not?
I was just tweeting, probably.
She was
Trying to-
hashtagging I stand with Planned
I was
Parenthood.
just amplifying the
Everyone
effort.
else
That's what we're
appears to
doing.
be paying attention to the speakers.
PlannedParenthood.org. That's what I was doing, getting the word out.
All right. I thought that perhaps you were concerned that you were because you're on the school board,
Yes.
that you were tweeting about this massive budget deficit that we read about in the school board. You've been there, what, 2 weeks, and it's already in the red.
That's right.
What's happening?
You gave me the line, the Trump line.
Well, yeah, there's that. She inherited a mess.
I'm not saying that. That's Jerry's joke. No.
So what's going on over there?
Our schools are in great shape. We have.
They're running like a well-oiled machine.
That's right. We have a great superintendent of education, Carrie Matsuoka, who the Independent did a great job featuring last week. I think it was last week. Yeah, so we have some budget tightening to do, and it's actually going to be taken care of by this next meeting. It's $2.5 million, which represents 1.6% of the total budget. So that happens. As you probably well know, our budget is very much tied, our state funding is very much tied to enrollment, and enrollment can fluctuate, and it's a little bit down right now. And so we have to make some tweaks. There aren't any cuts in terms of teachers or programs. It's really stuff like a software program that turned out to be not that useful is going to get slashed. Things like that.
No
So
more iPads. Those
No, the
are-
iPads are still there. It's yeah. So it's I'm not minimizing that. It's we have to make sure that we have a budget that's in the black. But the superintendent has done that, and so we just heard sort of his first recommendations for some suggested cuts, and then he said that this will be resolved at the next meeting.
So when people read this, parents read this, they shouldn't be concerned about teacher layoffs or increases
Yeah, no,
in
and it's
class
the
size.
headline, and the headline does make it seem more dire when you do think about the fact that, again, it's just 1% of the entire budget, and that's pretty standard for budgets to be off a little bit and to make adjustments. So
Yeah,
yeah,
What
but
about-
it is a good piece. I'm glad Brooke
our friend Brooke Collins
did a nice
yeah,
job,
did a
but
nice job.
covering it. And it's I've just been impressed with our superintendent and our budget team at the district, and they're looking at ways in which we can be more efficient.
Does the school district get any federal money, and how will the appointment of Secretary of Education
Yes.
Betsy DeVos affect this?
Well, thanks to, I just was reading the bottom line, a UCSB publication, so federal funding kind of per state is about 10%. So I don't know that number for Santa Barbara School District, but that coming through California, it probably translates to about 10%. And yeah, I mean, we're in trouble with this new Secretary of Education. How much trouble, we're not really sure. Someone who hasn't really been involved in education, let's hope she doesn't stay involved in education, even in this new post, and doesn't have much of an imprint. But she's troublesome because she doesn't appear to know that much about public education, and more so, her career has been about shifting dollars away from public education into private. So those are very concerning platforms to have a new Secretary of Education.
So she's a charter.
No, she is a
School-
voucher proponent, which is a big
voucher.
difference.
What's the difference?
So charters are within the public school system. So a group of parents or teachers, if they have a particular desire to create a school for whatever reason, a different kind of curriculum or emphasis on art, for example, they can work with the state and get a charter. You have to have a fiscal sponsor, but the public dollars still flow to both public dollars and accountability. That's the important
I
part.
see.
And so Betsy DeVos, our new Secretary of Education, has spent along her time that she has focused on education has been to support vouchers, which take public dollars away from the school system and allow somebody to choose to use that money to go to a private school. And she's also supported those for-profit schools, which have a really dicey track record
right.
and lack of accountability. So with the charter, you still have the accountability that from the state and also the charter. So for example, Peabody is a wonderful charter school here in Santa Barbara, a big one. It's one of the biggest elementary schools. And we work closely with this. The district works closely with Peabody and shares services and accountability and things like that.
How many charter schools do we have?
We have a handful. Some are very small. I think we have I should know this, but we probably have 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6.
And how are they accountable again? No.
because they can lose their charter. So they have to have and they have to be chartered by the state and also by an agent that, like the district, that approves their charter as well.
So according to what, scores, children's scores, or?
Yeah, fiscal compliance, teacher success rates, things like, a bunch of different factors. But I'm just learning that because, for example, at our last meeting, the renewal of Peabody's charter just started its first sort of assessment. And so we do that on a regular basis. The school district does.
Are there any impacts with the federal funding to any students' immigration status at all? Does that come up as a conversation on the school board?
Yeah, we don't track undocumented students, so we don't have a number. But we obviously know that population is significant here in this area, and so that's why one of our first actions as a school board, the new school board, was to pass a Safe Schools resolution to declare that our campuses were safe from students feeling vulnerable, that ICE agents were going to come in and take them away. So we'll see what happens with this administration. Certainly, if there's mass deportations and things like that, it'll have an impact on the schools. But the schools should and are safe places where kids should feel comfortable, and a lot of support too with AB 540. Thankfully, students can graduate from our schools, undocumented students, and pay in-state tuition in California. And that's one of the things that California has led the way on. Immigration works here by and large. There's an integration, from the top all the way through, like from high tech all the way through our school system.
No, they'll fix that. All right, Josh. So the city is making great strides toward building new affordable housing. I read in your new real estate column in the Pacific Coast Business Times, plenty of free parking. Get that mugshot changed, by the way. Talk to Starshine about that. She's pretty much of an expert about changing her mugshot.
More sex in the headline and dye my hair.
Yeah,
and,
that kind of thing. Yeah.
That'll make the difference.
Also, if you go like this, columns always look good like that. Anyway, tell us about this new unaffordable development that you write about.
Well, on Upper State Street, there used to be a motel, and you've probably driven by it a million times, but it's being redeveloped.
What was that? Was it the Seagull, or what was the name?
I think it was the Adobe Motel over there, kind of by La Cumbre Plaza. And so now it's a 4-story, 89-unit rental apartment project, and the rents are.
It's all rental?
It's rental, yeah. So we're seeing a lot of rental developments being proposed and approved. Not a lot's been built yet. Go through the city process because we've got this new ordinance that allows
the AUD.
Average unit size,
not the
density. She already talked.
Yeah, we were. She had her turn.
So it allows developers to have more density, build more units, which will theoretically help rental projects pencil out. And so anyway, there's a new project going up. It's called The Mark. It just looks really, really sort of interesting. You've got 4 stories. The top units are floor to ceiling glass walls with views of the mountains. But the thing is that these 1 bedrooms are renting for almost $3,000.
So not really affordable.
Yeah, it's that whole thing of people really not understanding who lives in Santa Barbara. It's easy for out-of-town developers to come in, of course, and build these things and say, oh, we're going to cater to the millennials, and we've got all these tech workers who are coming into Santa Barbara, and all these people work at Sonos, and this is exactly where they're going to work and pay rent and walk and take the bus. And that kind of development is awesome, right? Like if they can figure out a way to make it affordable to the people who need it. I think these units are 20% pre-rented.
So if the city's whole thing is affordable housing, how does this get approved for $3,200 a month? Because it's clearly not affordable.
Well, the city does.
Affordable.
The city does not have rent control. The city's not subsidizing this, so it isn't a matter of, yes, you can build this if you cap the rents at this. What it is saying we need rentals. We need
of any type.
Yes, because we can't just have the $1.3 million homes, the kind like you live. Well, you're probably up to like almost 2 now, Jerry. But
Don't start with me. Well, we could afford it when we had Airbnb, but don't get me started on that.
You don't care? You see people on the street with no place to...
Come on,
okay,
come on, finish up there.
So we need rental units for working people, for middle-class people, for people who...
But a teacher can't afford that. A cop can't afford that. Really?
No, I mean, that's a mortgage payment. You know, it's more than a mortgage payment for a lot of people
Yeah.
if they had the down payment. But it's, you know, you can walk to Dunkin' Donuts and, you know, have a coffee. You can take the bus to downtown. But I just think it's interesting because I've been around Santa Barbara for a while, and these kinds of projects, I mean, we've seen the public market has those high-end,
Right.
rentals, and they are not occupied. They're not, you know, they're not full. You know, actually, I don't know who's going to live
And
there.
we have a 1% vacancy rate.
Yeah, and meanwhile, you know, Dario Pini's over here renting to, you know, he has no problem finding renters, but that's at the very bottom, below market sort of area. So it's just, Santa Barbara is just this weird sort of mix of things. And I don't know, I mean, I can't even fathom living in I have 3 bedrooms, right? You know, 2 kids, married. Like, I can't even fathom like living in a place like that and paying that much money. It's not catering to somebody like me, but if I'm all by myself, I can afford it anyway.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't know.
Well, I'm delighted that you have a new real estate column because
Yeah.
you know more about this stuff than almost anybody else who's out there writing, and I'm glad you have a platform and a venue for
Thank you.
plenty of free parking, and you can pay me after the show, Josh, for saying so. But do pick up the Pacific Coast Business
Yeah,
Times
I
this
don't
week.
have to, you know, I'm not
But-
stretching the truth as much as I
But,
used to.
yeah, I know. But fix that picture, will you? Okay. All right. Well, thank you to Laura Capps and Josh Molina and Starshine Rochelle for joining us tonight. And thank you all for watching. And thanks to our crew, Oscar, Orchid, Addie, Catherine, TJ, and Sean. And tune in next time if you want to get in touch with us. SB City Desk on Facebook, sbcitydesk@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on City Desk.